This way, we obtain sincere, energetic activists to propagate our desires without having to reveal our motives or even existence. We do not want an educational system that produces hard-driving individuals bent on amassing great wealth and power. Therefore, we discourage education that will develop the potential powers of students to their fullest. Liberal education that stresses knowledge for its own sake, or even sophistry and sterile mental gymnastics, are of no danger to us. Relevant, vocational, or career-oriented education also poses no danger to our power. Education that prepares students to accept a cog-like existence in our military, industrial, social welfare regulation complex is ideal. Progressive education with its stress on social adjustment also produces the conformity we require of our subjects. Emphasis on competitive sports may produce a certain amount of disruptive competitiveness among the participants, but primarily has the effect of creating lifelong voyeuristic spectators who will enthusiastically sublimate their competitiveness to endless hours of following college and professional sports on the boob tube. Space spectaculars and dramatic political infighting are also marvellous diversions with which to occupy the masses. Anyone seeking social change will gravitate to the field of education. Our strategy is simple. Let only those succeed whose influence would be compatible with our power. Encourage all who would develop the passive or receptive mode of existence. Discourage all who promote the aggressive or active capacities. Build a great cult of salvation through endless education, touting it as the democratic path to success. Deride the frontal approach to success of the outmoded, rugged individualist. Before yielding the floor to Professor X, who will discuss the role of secret societies and prestigious clubs, I would like to comment on the demise of religious education as a vehicle for social control. Religion in its time was a remarkable weapon for inculcating subservience, altruism, and self-abnegation among our subjects. We did not give up this weapon voluntarily. Your grandfather, for one, supported the Baptist faith well after most finance capitalists had turned wholly to secular ideologies. However, a trend toward rationality in human affairs plods along inexorably, quite outside the reach of our power. Only in our totalitarian dictatorships can this trend be quashed entirely. In the semi-open societies in which our money power is based, the forces of reason can only be impeded and diverted. Some have theorized that eventually widespread rational egoism will overturn our order. I am confident that secular faiths and just plain confusion will sacrifice to sustain our power for many centuries to come. I believe it was at that point, Hun, as I was reading this, we were reading this in the kitchen earlier, that's when you had a comment to make? Like...
Which was?
That's what they think.
That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah. They've got judgment happening. The reaping of their wicked souls by the angels. They will be cast off the earth, along with all who are evil, unbelieving. Here we go, Professor X on prestigious associations and secret societies. Another quote. Every compulsion is put upon writers to become safe, polite, obedient, and sterile. In protest, I decline election to the National Institute of Arts and Letters some years ago, and now I must decline the Pulitzer Prize. That was Upton Sinclair. Another quote. It is useless to deny, because it is impossible to conceal, that a great part of Europe, the whole of Italy and France, and a great portion of Germany, to say nothing of other countries, is covered with a network of these secret societies, just as the superficies of the earth is now being covered with railroads. That was Benjamin Disraeli, Earl of Beaconsfield, on July the 14th, 1856. Here we go. In preserving and protecting our grasp on nations, we must exert valid control of all major opinion-moulding associations, and especially prestigious clubs which attract the leaders in various fields and do so much to influence the dispensing of commanding positions in governments and business. Associations of the leading scholars, businessmen, writers, religionists, artists, bureaucrats, newsmen, ideologists, publishers, broadcasters and professional men, as well as special interest groups representing labourers, farmers, consumers, racial minorities and so on, must be subtly kept under the broad limits of our sway. Since membership dues and fees are never sufficient to support their ambitious activities, voluntary, non-profit organisations are easy prey for the nearly unlimited financial resources of our entourage. However, our real motive to further our political and economic power must not be revealed in the process. Our policies must be laboriously rationalised in terms compatible with prevalent ideologies and moralities, or the material advantage of the groups involved. Leaders of such groups are remarkably quick to accept our rationalisations when financial support is extended. We engage in outright bribery only as our last resort, and only then in extreme cases. Our long-range interests are better served by temporarily postponing a policy victory than by risking exposure of our power by attempting outright bribery. In fact, clumsy bribery and intimidation attempts are characteristic of our foolish, nouveau riche opponents. As an example, if we decide that federal rather than state chartering or licensing of corporations would further our control over the economy, we would not simply order politicians and opinion leaders to support our desires. Corporations not relishing central control would be suspicious that something was afoot and might expose our plot. Our strategy would be as follows. Number 1, sacrifice one of our less competent management teams in a well-publicised corporate scandal in order to focus attention on the widespread problem of corporate corruption under current lax legislations or regulations. Number 2, through well-funded agents, thrust into the publicity spotlight intellectuals or groups who already support federal licensing as a piecemeal step towards socialism. Brackets. One can find pre-existing supporters for nearly any measure with sufficient effort. Number 3, after the issue is before the public, offer to support through foundations the objective study of the federal licensing proposals being discussed with an eye toward proposing legislation. Often, simultaneous support for studies by disreputable, irrational groups who will oppose the proposal is useful as well. Provide no platform for well-reasoned opposition. Number 4, when a groundswell of support appears to be building, provide the interested lobbying organisations with plenty of funds to grease the palms of politicians. The enactment of the federal licensing law thus appears as the will of society. Last-ditch opposition automatically appears mean-spirited, obstructionist, reactionary and paranoid, serving only to discredit our opposition. In our fully developed system of finance capitalist thought control and promotion control, our hierarchy of prestigious association is capped by a single prestige society. Now listen to this. This is where it names the zoo. The Council of World Affairs. This organisation is a front for the secret society of which your father is head. This secret society is made up of the people who have spoken, plus 6 others not present. You are replacing Professor Q, who is to retire shortly. Eventually, you will replace your father.